Welcome to Replatform TV, the YouTube channel for the popular Replatform podcast, available on all popular platforms including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Hosted by myself, Paul Rogers, and fellow experienced e-commerce consultant James Gurd, we'll provide regular deep dives into important e-commerce topics with practical advice for getting results and improving your site performance.
Hello and welcome to Replatform TV. So this is the very first episode. Quite exciting, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've never done this before. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Let's see how it goes. This Replatform TV is going to be a regular session. This week we are focused on improving on-site search performance and results. So we're going to discuss initially some key facts and trends, few shopper frustrations you need to think about, and then we're going to give you our top 10 of things to think about, things to improve, or things to do that will help improve performance based on experience we've had of working with multiple search tools and across various retail e-commerce sites. So let's start with a few facts and trends. Let's get the context of why this is important. So according to Econsultancy, search functionality is used in around 30% of sessions. It can be as low as 10%. It can be way, way higher than that as well. For example, on Amazon, I think it's something like over 75% of people when they land on the site go straight to search. So it's dependent on product type, range and size of business. For some businesses, it's less important. A mono brand with a tiny product catalog and not much content, search is going to add limited value compared with a massive catalog retailer like a House of Fraser or a Debenhams. Forrester, a study from this year showed that 8 out of 10 users leave an online store if it fails to provide good navigation and relevant search results. So it has a tangible impact on your business of getting search right. And also, visitors who use search generally are coming with clearer intent around a conversion. They typically convert up to 6 times higher than people using non-search journeys. This is data from Conversion Excel, who are conversion rate optimization specialists. And SearchNode have also found that searches generate between 30 to 60% of all e-commerce site revenue. So there's a big commercial play now. And this is the reason why we want to talk about it, because especially as more shoppers have moved to mobile, and the mobile experience is critical to performance. Mobile search is used regularly by people to find products, yet there's issues not just on mobile, on desktop, but primarily on mobile in terms of how well the search tool functions, how easy it is to find products. And this still exists across big retail e-commerce sites as well. So it's not, if you're a small business owner who's launched an e-commerce site, you're not alone on this. Search is a challenge for everybody. And that's why we want to give you practical insights. Paul, what are some of the key frustrations that you pull out, like shopper frustrations that cause issues with search?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the first one I've got is irrelevant products. So things like wrong color, or another one that I've seen a lot of is things like accessories, for example, superseding the actual products, or just kind of bad merchandising results generally, but people searching and not finding the products they're looking for. So that's similar to the second one, so I'll skip that. Products missing as well. So this is generally caused by platform integration and things like cron jobs not running, or just general kind of issues with integrations. Search not being able to handle kind of certain types of queries. So a lot of the more modern vendors, rely or use NLP to kind of process more advanced queries. But if something isn't directly relevant to the name of a product or kind of the long description, then not being able to process that. Speed is another one. So the speed to load results, having to go through to a search results page, the time it takes for that page to load, the filtering on the search results page, etc. And I think now there's people tend to expect some level of autocomplete. Bad design and UI generally, mobile usability being one of the more key areas, I would say. And then bad error handling. So not kind of providing a next step or a suggestion or related queries, or even some level of personalized product recommendations.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a nice summary and things that all of us have experienced ourselves when trying to browse and shop online. So with that in mind, that's the kind of context given. Let's now focus on 10 areas that we think you should focus on with some tips and advice. So number one is A/B testing search box design to increase engagement. Given the fact that search sessions typically convert better than non-search, there is an imperative for businesses to get the search function engaged with by more users. Now, often people design a search box, they leave it on the site, and that's it, job done. They then worry about the algorithm in the background and all of the product data stuff, not actually how visually appealing is the search to use in the first place. So look at testing that design box. I saw some really good tests run by Conversion Excel for multiple clients. And they tested simple things such as on desktop, the search box being full width, not half width. On mobile, having a persistent search box, not just a spyglass icon that you click to then expand and show the search box. Even having text within the text box saying, search for a product, or, enter your keyword here. Even down to animated text. So as the text box is loading, the text is then writing in, and you're seeing the sentence form saying, search here for a product, trying to encourage you into action. So lots of ways that you can make subtle visual changes to try and get greater attention and drive people into search journeys. Now, interestingly, nobody does this consistently, because if you look at the big retailers, you'll find that someone like Amazon, search box is persistent even on mobile for obvious reason. Most people use search on Amazon rather than catalog navigation. But big fashion brands like ASOS and Farfetch on mobile only have a spyglass icon. They're not having a persistent search, and they've probably tested that. So the key thing here is testing. And unless you test, you don't know what's going to work best for your site. Right? What's for you, Paul, next?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I was going to add to that, another one that I've done some little bits of testing around has been placeholder text, to try and make people kind of, if you've got a really good search function or a big catalog, try and make people search for more detailed queries. So my one is the kind of predictive search overlay and the kind of design and UI side of that. Predictive search can add a lot of value based on various kind of studies and data that you can find online. There's also like a level of expectation, I would say, from consumers now, and it works particularly well on mobile. With that, it's important to make sure that the overlay, it can be easily closed both on desktop and mobile, and that's also important from an accessibility perspective. That's one of the areas where a lot of people tend to fail some of the kind of tests around accessibility. Images are recommended and can enhance that kind of overlay and provide more context. I would say you should be looking to include kind of all detailed pricing information, so sale price, for example, as well. And then also ideally trying to make the product cards match the rest of the site, so including things like badging and any other kind of detail that you might have on product cards within the site. You could also index things like content results, blog posts, guides, etc., and ensure that you're kind of within that overlay handling errors as well. So just providing kind of next steps and alternative keywords and things like that.
Excellent. So next one for me is ensuring search results pages have accurate filtering. And again, it seems like a no-brainer, but it's not always followed through. So there's two things here. Number one is making sure that you keep a consistent UI pattern between your standard product list pages and your search results pages. So people visiting your site are used to where the filters and sort options are. Secondly is ensuring they're contextually relevant. So you don't just keep the same filters on every single page. They've got to be relevant only to the product subset that's been returned in the result. That helps speed up decision-making for customers. The other thing that's important to do, and I've seen this, I did a lot of work with big consumer brands like Mars, for example, looking at their retail estate. And it's checking on sites where the navigation through the catalogue and the search results for matching journeys have the same product results. I found issues where there's a lack of continuity where a catalogue navigation into a particular department or category page has found products, but the same search, which should return that entire set, has found about 40 or 50 products. So there's an issue with the algorithmic matching. So you've got to be really, really keen to check that for your top queries, at least, that you're getting the relevant filters and the right number of product matches in there to help customers then go and make a selection decision.
And then my next one is around context, I guess, and just making sure that you're kind of indexing as much information as possible, and then also kind of enriching that information. So as an example, if people are searching by size or price, or kind of adding more detail to the query, which is ultimately what you want to try and get people through to the right product as soon as possible, making sure that you can process those queries and provide the right product. So a lot of the platforms' native search capabilities, or even some of like the basic third parties, won't have NLP, for example, so natural language processing, which is essentially the principle of kind of enriching product data and adding more context, and being able to then serve product for more advanced queries. And then alongside that, you want to ensure that your search provider has visibility of all of the right kind of product data beyond just the title and the long description, which a lot of search providers might use. So as an example, so one of James's clients, Vashi, uses Clayvu, and if you search for white gold earrings less than £500, you get the right results. Whereas if you do the same on Astley Clark, the first product wouldn't fit within that price bracket. And various other search providers have NLP as well. So Algolia very recently started using NLP. I think Bloomreach is quite big on it, SearchSpring, etc. And then Farfetch is another kind of retailer / brand that have done a lot around search, and I know they've kind of built out their own proprietary offering, and they've done a lot around natural language processing, and they are another good example of strong results.
Yeah, definitely. The data bit and algorithmic accuracy is critical, which kind of leads into the next point for me, which is around kind of data cleanliness and relevance, is tweaking product titles based on user query language. Again, this is a really good opportunity for brands to learn from the data. So every time, as provided you've set your analytics up correctly, which you should double check that it's tracking all the search queries and you've got accurate query data, then that query language the customer is using might be subtly different to the language you're using in your product titles, your product descriptions, or even your labels in terms of your catalog labels and filters. If you're seeing a consistent use of language by customers, you need to make sure that your products are going to match against those queries, because out the box, without any of this kind of like NLP and AI capabilities, you'll find that a lot of search tools will simply match based on keywords. So make sure that you continuously tweak and test your product titles and align it with the shopper language, so that when a shopper searches something, they are getting relevant product matches. Very easy to go into your search query reports, dig out the most popular data, look at them by volume, look at all the keyword queries being used, and also get reports on zero results, so you can start to find out where a query might be relevant to your product set, but the search isn't bringing relevant products back, and you can then match it. So yeah, definitely do A/B testing on product titles to see what that can do to improve search accuracy and search conversion.
Great. And then my next one is around SEO. So search can be a bit of an issue from an SEO perspective if you allow search engines to crawl these pages. So particularly from a crawl budget perspective, so a lot of retailers would block search parameters or search pages via the robots.txt file, or at least prevent them from being indexed. If you're a smaller brand, you might strategically use search pages to help you from an SEO perspective. So you might have the ability to override and allow certain search pages to be indexed, but overall, unless you have the ability to kind of inject content and change metadata and things like that, it's not generally recommended. Although some people do that, and there are kind of certain providers or modules and things like that for some platforms that allow you to do that. But personally, I wouldn't recommend it. And then another one, so in terms of if you're using a search provider, so these days a lot of the search providers would also input into category merchandising, and that's a big increasing trend. And if you are using one of the providers for category merchandising, it's important to ensure that the product grid isn't just solely served via JavaScript, and you want some level of like server-side representation, or just avoid doing that. So that's something you need to be cautious of, particularly with the SaaS platforms where you don't have access to the server. So that's another one to just watch out for.
Cool. My next point is around analytics and metrics. There are so many different reports and metrics you can use to measure search performance. sometimes teams just focus on the real simple keyword query report and don't look deeper into search performance. So think about which metrics will help you better understand whether search is adding value to the business and where you have opportunities to improve. So a few examples. Query conversion rate. So how does each query convert? Are there any queries that are poor at converting? And are those queries therefore aligned with people who are in research phases? And therefore you might have an opportunity to inject additional content into the results page to help drive people into better decision making. If you have long tail queries for a very specific product and you're getting a very poor conversion rate, it would suggest that there's either an issue with the product or with that search journey. So you need to look at it and try and fix it. Zero results queries, that enables you to do one of two things. Number one is create specific redirects for a particular query into a category page, a product page, or wherever it might be relevant landing page to try and end that dead end. Number two is improve your generic zero results page to be more active, not more passive, more active in pushing people into products, categories, and other journeys. Click-through rate from list page and position is an interesting one. And this applies to any list page, not just search results. So do people click through beyond position 3, 4, 5, 6? And for those working as brands with multiple retail partners, this becomes a really important metric because the numbers can differ quite considerably from site to site. That gives you a cutoff point where well, after position X, we know on mobile, on desktop, we're getting very little click-through rate to product. So therefore, our opportunity for product optimization is only this number of products. It sharpens your focus in terms of what you do from a merchandising point of view. And then two other ones I think are useful: search followed by exit. If someone's done a search and then they leave the site completely, why? What is happening there? Is there something you can do to kind of stop that? Or is it a natural part of their research journey? But you could do something around kind of exit intent overlays to try and encourage onward journeys. And the next bit is search followed by catalog navigation. So if somebody searched and then they've jumped straight into navigation, what is it in the search journey that's not answered their query? Can you learn something from their onward path that can help you improve what you're doing within search? And that could be something to do with content placement within search results, or it could even be the fact that you find you haven't got the right products based on that query, and you need to rethink the set of results you return.
Right, and leading on from that, and I guess these two interlink quite well. So when you're doing that kind of analysis of your search performance and kind of which products are performing better and queries and everything else, then it's important to balance your kind of automation with the manual work you're doing and kind of react to some of those trends. So when you're kind of selecting a third party, or if you're looking at third parties, it's really important that you have a kind of simplistic, kind of low maintenance way to merchandise your search results. I personally also like to have kind of different levels of merchandising. So the ability to kind of weight products globally so that if two products are equally as relevant, one's going to supersede the other. Ideally, you'd then be able to create rules so you could boost specific types of products in specific scenarios. And then also keyword level boosting, which can be really important. So in the past, with a lot of clients, I found there's a bit of an 80-20 rule with this as well. So actually, you don't need to spend huge amounts of time doing this, but it's important to make sure that the products that ultimately you want to put in front of a user are prominent for the kind of top 5 to 10 queries, which actually represent maybe 50-60% of your search usage. So it's important to kind of combine the two overall. And a lot of people will say that actually, in order to get the most out of an AI-based or kind of machine learned search provider, you need to kind of let the algorithm run. But overall, I think we work with a lot of fashion brands, and in fashion, often there's a lot of anti-logic. So people wanting to kind of promote products that maybe aren't the ones that are selling the most. So most of the AI will be tuned towards clicks, add to carts and sales. And often that might not be what's most important to you as a business, and you might want to kind of give newer products more prominence. So that's where you would need to kind of manually merchandise some of those key queries or manually boost some of those products. So I'd say that's kind of a key thing to just make sure that you have access to as a brand. And then it's important to kind of make sure that you're reporting on the right metrics that allow you to then react. And then you have the right processes in place to kind of do this on a regular basis, as you would with category merchandising or product recommendations, etc.
Yeah, that's a good point about brand curation and not losing sight of that in search results. My last point and tip is about enriching product pages with rich attributes and copy. So not to see a new product when it's launched as, right, we've done it, we've put the product copy and that's great, we just use it now from a merchandising point of view. That page should be constantly active. You should be learning from your search query data to look at any other words that customers use in queries that you could append to that. That's either in, we talked about testing product titles, but you could append additional attributes, find an attribute. I haven't done some research with Samsung and also their retail partners, discovering additional attributes that people search for in terms of things like noise reduction for appliances. You add those in as attributes, mark them up as attributes. That can then also improve filtering on the site as well in results pages, which is great. But it's using things like Q&A search. So go to sites like answerthepublic.com or use a tool like SEMrush and do keyword queries and then filter by questions only. Start to understand the type of questions and information people are searching for generally related to a product. And then you can enhance copy. That not only does that help your on-site search, you've got richer wording within the product pages, but also it benefits from an SEO point of view potentially.
So my last point is around personalisation and machine learning. So lots of the search vendors are now doing kind of different levels of personalisation and machine learning. And this can add a lot of value and kind of reduce manual overhead significantly. And, you know, when we've used tools that have a level of machine learning, we've always seen some level of uplift. But equally, it's important to monitor that. Personalisation, so kind of one-to-one user level personalisation is a big trend at the moment. Most vendors have introduced it at least over the last kind of 12 months. And what that generally will do is kind of create affinities based on the product or the attributes with products that you've interacted with. And I would say it's worth monitoring how effective that is, because I've seen it can have mixed results essentially, because you might build an affinity with, say, for example, a Nike shoe, but actually you're browsing different types of products, and then and that can impact the kind of relevance of results. But equally, it's something to test that I think can add a lot of value if you kind of tune it correctly. And then from a machine learning perspective, it's always worth kind of making sure that the right kind of attributes are getting the right amount of, or the right level of weighting, I guess. And being able to kind of tune that a little bit, as well as kind of relying on core product capabilities. And then kind of A/B testing. So James has made a point here around this, and I think it's important to just test the kind of machine learning and automation versus manual results, and kind of what performs better. And ultimately, like this, I think is just a case of it goes back to that reporting point where it's worth kind of just monitoring what you're doing and making sure that actually when you are kind of manually curating results versus relying on automation, that it is performing as you expect.
Yeah, agreed. And my recommendation to anybody who's considering a new tool which has like the AI ML automation of personalization is A/B test it against your current setup to validate that it has an incremental impact rather than substitutional.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's boil this down. One key takeaway each. What would yours be, Paul?
So mine would be build processes, I think. So a lot of our clients are definitely guilty of just leaving search, and they don't have processes to go back maybe monthly to ensure that the products that they want to get the most exposure at that time are getting the most exposure. And then also just ensuring relevancy and looking at queries that are returning zero results and kind of optimizing them and stuff like that. I think it's important to build search into almost like your trade level reporting, and then have processes at least monthly to do some level of merchandising.
Yeah, fully agreed. very similar to mine, which is around auditing search performance regularly and not just leaving it to one person once a month to do a report, because shopper trends, especially around peak trading cycles, you can find query trends change quite rapidly from day-to-day basis. So keep an eye on the reports, and as shopper interests and language change over time, use that to inform things like product and content optimization. That's my takeaway. Recommended reading, because we always think it's useful to people to look at other resources. Go on to searchnode.com. They've got a really good blog around e-commerce site search best practices. Quite a few of the topics we talked about today are featured in there, and there's obviously written content so you can read at your leisure. There's a great book by Louis Rosenfeld called Search Analytics for Your Site. I've read it. It's brilliant. Very good around the measurement piece and understanding metrics. And then another one, Designing Search by Greg Noodleman, which is more of a UX and UI approach. But it's got contributions from people like Pete Bell, who was co-founder at Endeca, which was then bought by Oracle, one of the early big enterprise search and merch stacks. And also leading UX professionals such as Luke Wroblewski, who's very, very well respected for good reasons in the industry. So lots of practical takeaways in those resources. That brings us to the end of the search one. So thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for the next episodes. And if anyone's got any questions or queries about site search optimization, reach out to myself or Paul.